ASO Taro です。甚だ突然ですが、
I'm Taro ASO.
外交
I have a question.
の目的とは、一言で言えば
What, in a word, is the purpose of foreign policy? What do you think?
私は国家、国民の安
I
全と繁
believe
栄
it
の
is
確
to
保
ensure
であ
the
ると思います。
security and prosperity of your country and its people. That goal cannot be achieved by chanting self-serving ideals. The security and prosperity of Japan can only be realized within the context of a secure and prosperous global community. That's where I stand. This message must be taken close to heart, considering that Japan relies so heavily on foreign sources of and markets for food, resources, and energy. It was in September of last year that I became Prime Minister, and on September 15th, just before I was sworn in, the failure of a large U.S. securities company, Lehman Brothers, threw the world into a deep and serious financial and economic crisis. That was a real test of specific policies and action, rather than abstract theory. My call to action to the world leaders gathered at the G20 summit in Washington in November was for the industrialized countries to take coordinated action to battle the crisis. I cautioned the leaders against turning inwards and urged them to take control of the situation through proactive measures to safeguard global financial and economic order. For example, Japan led with an offer of a $100 billion loan to enhance the financial base of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. And since then, many countries have responded to my call to action. There were also some who feared that if I also became Prime Minister, then relations with China and South Korea will suffer. However, in spite of these concerns, the first trilateral summit of Japan, China, and South Korea was held in Fukuoka last December, and I have already met with President Hu Jintao and Prime Minister Wen Jianbao of China on 8 occasions, and I have also met with President Lee Myung-bak of South Korea on 8 occasions as well, including the day before yesterday. So I believe I can safely say that relations with the leaders of these two countries are the closest they have ever been since the end of World War II. Japan's national interests are best served when Japan takes the initiative and proactive action to create a safer and more prosperous world. In November 2006, as Mr. Nogami said, I spoke at a JIIA seminar. And there, in my speech, I discussed that in addition to the further enhancement of the Japan-US alliance, which is the very cornerstone of Japanese diplomacy and cooperation with neighboring countries, that I will advocate a new pillar of Japanese diplomacy, that is, the arc of freedom and prosperity. I said that Japan will support young nations which have a history, but which are endeavoring to build a new future with new hope after being freed from the yoke of the Cold War. I also said Japan is prepared to run alongside and escort those nations which are striving to promote peace and happiness through economic prosperity and democracy. I strongly believe in this idea of peace and happiness through economic prosperity and democracy, and that's the very path that Japan has tread and explored ever since the end of the war. It forms the backbone of Japan's foreign policy. Now, 2.5 years after I delivered that speech, the threats the world faces have deepened with North Korea's development of weapons of mass destruction and frequent terror and piracy. The financial and economic crisis has compounded the problems in all countries. Now then, let me share with you what Japan has done and what still remains to be done in light of this dire international situation. First of all, on the issue of Japanese and global security, we now face a grave and imminent threat. Since spring, North Korea has conducted a missile launch and its second nuclear test, one after another. This poses an obvious threat. UN Security Council Resolution 1874 was unanimously adopted. Now it must be fully implemented. Japan led the Security Council's decision to adopt a strong resolution, and the government will take appropriate responses, including financial measures and cargo inspection, amongst others, to implement that resolution. It's also necessary to work closely with the U.S., South Korea, China, and Russia to raise the pressure on Pyongyang, and we must make them understand that no one will gain from further provocations. At the same time, the doors will remain open for a resolution through dialogue. We have not closed the door. Japan will continue to urge North Korea to implement the Security Council resolution fully and in good faith, and to take visible action toward a comprehensive resolution to the pending issues, such as the abduction issue, the nuclear program, and missile development. The North Korean issue is a succinct example that Japan cannot ensure its security and prosperity alone. We must start by ensuring that the Japan-US alliance is effective. Any alliance has a life of its own. Just a treaty or document is not enough to keep it living. Relentless, endless efforts must be made by both allies, Japan and the U.S., to keep the U.S.-Japan security arrangement alive and well. At the same time, Japan must also fulfill its international responsibilities in concrete, visible ways if it wishes to promote national interests and gain the cooperation of affected governments. Recently, Japan has taken a major step forward in delivering on its global commitments with the passage of the anti-piracy law. Safe navigation of the seas is of critical importance for a trade-dependent nation like ours. Furthermore, responses to pirate threats is on the global agenda, and many governments have dispatched Navy vessels to the affected waters. Close to 2,000 vessels with Japanese interests navigate the Gulf of Aden and the coastal waters of Somalia every year. Japan has sent escort ships and P-3C patrol planes from the Maritime Self-Defense Forces to safeguard these vessels and the lives and wealth that they carry. The newly enacted law enables the Maritime Self-Defense Forces to guard all vessels which seek protection, regardless of their nationality. This initiative by Japan was received with gratitude from the owners of ships exposed to the piracy threat.